No one wanted the limping girl until the cowboy said, "Walk right into my heart." The wind blew small clouds of red dust through the empty streets, whispering secrets no one wanted to hear. Among the scattered buildings, a girl moved slowly, carefully, favoring her left leg. Every step made her wince, but she kept going because stopping wasn't an option. Alara had learned early that the world was not kind to those who were different. Her limp, a souvenir from a mining accident years ago, made her the target of whispered names and sideways glances. Children ran from her in fear, adults avoided her gaze, and even the animals seemed to sense her weakness and kept their distance. Yet, beneath the wary eyes and quiet murmurs, she carried something they could not see: determination. She paused near the edge of the village, where the ground sloped down toward the abandoned mining tunnels. Broken machines and rusted metal littered the terrain, relics of a time when people dreamed of striking it rich. Alara bent down and picked up a small metal rod, turning it over in her hands. It was worthless to anyone else, but to her, it might become a lever, a tool, or a weapon. The ability to see possibilities where others saw nothing was her secret strength. As she scavenged, she heard voices approaching. Not the voices of children, nor the lazy drawl of the adults who pretended not to notice her, but voices that carried something different. Alien. Strange. She froze, ears straining, and clutched the rod tighter. "Looks like the weakling's out scavenging again," one voice sneered. Alara's heart sank. A group of alien traders had arrived in the settlement, tall, angular beings with green, scaly skin and eyes that glowed faintly. Their ships hovered like dark birds over the dusty plains. They were known for their impatience and cruelty, especially toward humans. Humans were small, fragile creatures to them, barely worth a glance, but their cunning sometimes made them unpredictable, an annoyance these traders didn't appreciate. Alara backed into the shadow of a crumbling wall. She had learned to hide to avoid confrontation, but her hands shook as the alien stepped closer, scanning the ground for anything valuable. She clenched the rod and waited, her mind racing for ideas. One of the aliens, larger than the others, bent down, sniffing the air. Human scent, weak, alone, easy. Alara's stomach turned. She could run, but her limp slowed her, and the rough terrain made escape risky. She glanced around and noticed a pile of metal scraps nearby. An idea sparked. Using her strength in her arms and cleverness, she grabbed several pieces of scrap, tied them together with some old wiring she kept in her satchel, and created a small noise trap. She tossed it toward the aliens, and as the pieces clattered to the ground, they triggered a tiny chain reaction, scattering the scraps and startling the aliens. "What the?" one hissed, flailing. In that moment of confusion, Alara bolted, limping as fast as she could toward the nearby ridges. The aliens snarled and gave chase, but her intimate knowledge of the terrain gave her the edge. She ducked behind rocks, vaulted over rusted machinery, and disappeared into the tunnels that no alien dared enter. Inside the tunnel, she pressed her back against the cold stone wall, panting. Her heart thudded like a drum. She had survived, but barely. She lowered the rod, feeling a mix of fear and pride. She was alone, yes, but alone had taught her more about survival than anyone in the village could understand. Hours passed as she moved through the tunnels, scavenging scraps and finding old tech parts to trade. She imagined what she could do with them. Perhaps build a small device to help her walk more easily, or maybe something clever to fend off more aliens if they ever came back. The ideas flowed in her mind, sharp and bright, but always constrained by the harsh reality of her world. By the time night fell, the tunnels grew dark and cold. Alara had set up a small camp near an abandoned elevator shaft. She curled up with a thin blanket and allowed herself a small moment of rest. Outside, the wind howled across the settlement, carrying the faint sounds of alien ships departing and the distant, lonely calls of desert creatures. Alara's thoughts wandered to the village she had left behind. She remembered the sneers, the pointing fingers, the laughter behind closed doors. She had learned to ignore it, but the loneliness gnawed at her heart. She longed for someone who saw her not as broken or weak, but as she truly was, resourceful, brave, and determined. The morning light brought a new sound, wheels scraping across the metal roofs of the village. Curious, Alara peeked through a crack in the tunnel wall. A lone figure rode a strange-looking vehicle that hovered slightly above the ground, kicking up dust as it approached the settlement. Unlike the alien traders, this human moved with confidence. His hat was tilted low, his long coat fluttered behind him, and his eyes scanned the settlement with a careful, calculating look. Alara felt something she had not felt in a long time: curiosity. There was no fear in this human stance, no condescension, just purpose. As he neared the center of the settlement, he dismounted with a fluid motion, his boots kicking up dust. The villagers whispered and stared, unsure what to make of him. The man ignored them, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if he were looking for someone or something. Alara felt a strange pull in her chest. She wanted to hide, but a small voice in her mind urged her forward. Slowly, carefully, she limped out of the tunnel, using the shadows for cover. The man noticed immediately. He straightened, tipping his hat slightly. "You there?" he called gently, his voice calm but commanding. "Yes, you. Don't be afraid. Come out." Alara froze. She had been ignored, feared, or mocked for so long that someone noticing her felt unreal. But there was something in his voice that felt safe. She took a small step forward, then another. The limp slowed her progress, but she didn't stop. The man knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "Name S. Jace," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I could use someone with sharp eyes and quick hands." "Think you're up for it?" Alara's eyes widened. No one had ever offered her respect or even a chance without a trace of pity. She nodded slowly, unsure if she could trust him, but something deep inside whispered yes. Jace extended a hand, not to touch her but to invite partnership. "Come on," he said. "I've got a problem only someone clever can help with, and I have a feeling you're clever." For the first time in her life, Alara felt a flicker of hope. She took his hand, letting him help steady her as she climbed onto his strange hoverbike. The machine hummed to life, and the wind whipped through her hair. As they rose above the settlement and the distant mountains of rusted metal, Alara realized something. Perhaps being different wasn't a curse after all. Perhaps it was the very thing that could save her. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had finally found someone who saw her for who she truly was. Not weak, not broken, but remarkable. The wind carried them across the red desert, and for the first time in a long while, Alara smiled. A new chapter was beginning, one filled with danger, adventure, and, most importantly, possibility. The frontier was harsh. The galaxy was cruel. But Alara had learned the first rule: never underestimate a human. And she was about to prove it. The wind tore across the red plains of the frontier as Jace guided the hoverbike along the rocky terrain. Alara clung tightly to the sides, her limp making the ride slightly uncomfortable, but the thrill of speed and freedom made her heart race. The settlement shrank behind them, replaced by jagged cliffs and desert stretches that seemed endless. Jace glanced over at her, his eyes sharp but friendly. "Hold on tight," he said. "The path ahead isn't smooth, but I think you'll manage." Alara nodded, gripping the hoverbike with white-knuckled determination. She had survived the village's whispers, the alien scavengers, and her own fears. Nothing had prepared her for this, riding across open frontier land on a human-built machine, away from anyone who doubted her. "You're fast," Jace said suddenly, breaking the silence. "And careful, I like that." Alara glanced at him, surprised. Praise was rare. People usually overlooked her or mocked her limp, but Jace didn't see her as weak. He saw her skill, her courage. She felt a warmth inside, a small spark that said maybe this time someone believed in her. They followed a winding canyon path for hours, the sun climbing higher in the sky. Occasionally, Jace would stop to examine the terrain, marking points on a small device that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Alara noticed the precision in his movements. He wasn't just a cowboy, he was a survivor, someone who had navigated danger before. "Why are you out here alone?" she asked cautiously. "Most people stick to settlements." Jace shrugged, one hand resting lightly on the hoverbike controls. "Some people like the quiet. Some people like the freedom, and some people like the challenge." His eyes softened slightly as they met hers. "I think you might understand that better than most." Alara frowned. She wasn't sure she did, but the idea of being understood felt good. She looked down at her hands, calloused from years of scavenging and fixing broken machines. She had learned to survive alone, but maybe surviving wasn't enough anymore. Maybe there was more to life than avoiding whispers and loneliness. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the landscape shifted. The flat desert gave way to jagged cliffs and rocky outcrops, perfect for hiding, perfect for danger. And danger came faster than she expected. A group of alien scavengers appeared ahead, their sleek vehicles glinting in the fading light. Their movements were deliberate, almost predatory. Alara's heart sank. She had faced them before, alone, and barely escaped. But now she wasn't alone. Jace slowed the hoverbike and motioned for her to stay low. "Don't panic," he whispered. "We can get past them if we think smart." Alara's hands tightened on the handlebars. She took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge. She wasn't just running for herself now, she had someone to protect, someone who trusted her. The scavengers' vehicles roared closer, kicking up dust and rocks. Jace tilted the hoverbike, weaving through the cliffs. Alara noticed a narrow path between two boulders just wide enough for a quick escape. She pointed it out. "Good eye," Jace said with a nod. "Follow my lead." Together, they maneuvered through the canyon, the scavengers' engines echoing behind them. Alara felt her heart pounding, but she didn't falter. She adjusted her weight, leaned into the turns, and even managed to anticipate the rocks ahead. Jace glanced at her, impressed. "You're better than you look," he said with a grin. "Not many could keep up like that." Alara felt a shy smile tug at her lips. Compliments weren't common in her life, and hearing one from someone she respected made her chest swell with pride. The path opened up onto a plateau, giving them space to breathe. The scavengers skidded to a halt at the canyon entrance, frustrated by their failure to catch the humans. Alara and Jace slowed, watching as the aliens exchanged incomprehensible words. "Not bad for a first ride," Jace said, patting the side of the hoverbike. "You've got instincts, quick thinking, and you don't panic when things go wrong. That's rare." Alara felt her cheeks warm. I've had to survive," she admitted softly. "I don't really know any other way." Jace smiled, his gaze steady. "That's exactly why you're useful. Humans aren't always the strongest or the fastest, but we can adapt, think, solve problems. That's our edge. That's what makes us special." Alara listened carefully. She had heard adults say humans were weak, fragile, but here was someone proving that wasn't true. That humans could be clever, brave, and unstoppable in their own way. They set up camp that evening on a flat stretch of rock, overlooking the canyon. The wind had calmed, and the stars began to appear, glittering like tiny diamonds on black velvet. Alara helped gather small pieces of scrap metal to reinforce the hoverbike for the night. Jace watched her work silently, then said, "You know, most people in the settlements would have hidden from those scavengers. You didn't. You helped. That shows more courage than a dozen soldiers." Alara looked up, surprised. "Courage?" she asked. She had always thought courage meant strength or skill in battle, not this. "Courage is more than that," Jace explained. "It's facing what scares you and still doing what's right. You did that today. You proved it." Alara felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Not her neighbors, not the village elders. She had been invisible for so long that being seen like this felt almost magical. The night grew colder, but the campfire crackled, keeping them warm. Alara stared at the stars, thinking about what Jace had said. Maybe she wasn't weak. Maybe her limp didn't define her. Maybe, just maybe, she could be someone important. Jace broke the silence. There's a settlement a few days from here. Small, mostly human. They could use someone like you. Someone clever, brave, and capable. Alara's heart skipped a beat. The idea of leaving her old life behind, of stepping into a place where she could belong, was intoxicating. But fear tugged at her. What if she failed? What if she was still too slow, too weak? Jace seemed to read her thoughts. Fear is normal. It means you care. But don't let it stop you. Humans survive because we adapt, because we don't give up. And I have a feeling you won't give up either. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying their words far across the desert. Alara felt a sense of calm wash over her. For the first time, she wasn't alone. For the first time, she felt seen. The next morning, they set out again, traveling across the rugged terrain. Jace taught her to read the signs of the land, how to spot safe paths, where to find water, and how to avoid trouble before it found them. Alara absorbed everything, realizing that she had a natural talent for survival, enhanced by her years of scavenging. By the end of the second day, they reached a narrow gorge. A small river trickled at the bottom, glinting in the morning sun. Jace pointed to a rocky ledge above. "We'll rest there. Good vantage point. We can see anyone coming from miles away." Alara followed him, climbing with care. Her limp made the ascent slower, but she didn't complain. Jace waited patiently, offering a hand when necessary. Once at the top, they surveyed the landscape below. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught Alara's eye. A group of scavengers, smaller this time, was approaching from the opposite side. They hadn't spotted them yet, but the humans had the advantage of height. Jace smiled faintly. "Looks like we've got company again, but this time we're ready." Alara felt a thrill of excitement. She no longer feared the scavengers. Instead, she felt prepared, capable, and alive. Together, they would face any challenge, using their minds, their courage, and their bond. As the sun set behind the canyon walls, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Alara realized something profound. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And with Jace by her side, she knew the frontier had a place for her, a place where her courage, cleverness, and humanity could shine. Humans might be small, fragile, and underestimated. But as Alara had learned, being human meant being adaptable, clever, and unstoppable in ways others could never predict. And she was ready to prove it. The morning sun spilled gold over the horizon, illuminating the jagged rocks and red plains of the frontier. Alara stretched her arms and flexed her legs, feeling the stiffness in her limp, but also a quiet sense of pride. She had survived the first real test with Jace by her side. Together, they had outwitted alien scavengers, navigated dangerous terrain, and proven to themselves that humans, even fragile ones, could rise to challenges. Jace was already up, tending to the hoverbike with a small tool kit. The bike hummed softly, its circuits whirring as he checked the repairs from the previous day. "You're early," Alara said, approaching him. "Can't waste a morning," Jace replied, smiling. "The frontier doesn't wait for anyone, especially humans. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Alara nodded, feeling the truth in his words. In her old village, life had been predictable, boring, and cruel. But here in the open desert, everything demanded attention, quick thinking, and courage. Every moment was a lesson, and she was learning faster than she had ever imagined. They set off toward the settlement Jace had mentioned, the one a few days' ride away. The terrain was rough, littered with rocks and narrow cliffs, but Alara felt more confident now. She balanced herself on the hoverbike, anticipating dips and turns, leaning with the machine as they sped across the plateau. She could feel the wind against her face, the dust in her hair, and the thrill of moving freely, faster than she had ever moved before. By midday, the desert stretched into rolling hills, dotted with scrub and occasional clusters of alien flora. Jace pointed ahead. "There," he said, "settlements just beyond that ridge." Alara squinted. At first, she could only see the glimmer of metal roofs reflecting the sun. As they approached, she noticed people moving about, humans mostly, but a few small, gentle-looking aliens living quietly alongside them. The settlement was modest, built from salvaged metal and stone, but it had a warmth that reminded her of home, or what home could have been if she had been accepted. They landed the hoverbike at the edge of the settlement, and a few curious eyes turned toward them. Some villagers whispered, others watched silently. Alara felt the familiar sting of being judged, but Jace remained calm, his presence commanding respect. "Stay close," he murmured to her. "We don't know them yet." Alara nodded, keeping her distance while observing the settlement. She noticed children playing near a water well, laughing and running, their voices carrying across the plaza. It was a scene she had never imagined herself part of, light, carefree, and human. She wished she could step forward and join, but fear held her back. Before she could think too much, Jace stepped forward, waving at a woman approaching them. The woman's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the hoverbike and the pair of travelers. "Welcome," she said warmly. "I'm Mara, the settlement's coordinator. You're far from the main trade routes." "Who are you?" Jace smiled, extending a hand in greeting. "Name S. Jace. This is Alara. We're travelers looking for work and a place to rest. We also have skills that might help your settlement." Mara's eyes flicked to Alara, taking in her slight frame, her limp, and the determined expression on her face. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "If you have skills, we could always use help. Come, I'll show you to the work area." Alara followed, staying slightly behind Jace. As they walked, she felt the curious eyes of villagers on her. Some were wary, others interested, and a few seemed to admire her courage simply for stepping into their community. She straightened her back and lifted her chin. She wouldn't let fear control her. The work area was a busy place, filled with humans and a few aliens tending gardens, repairing structures and crafting tools. Jace led Alara to a corner where old machinery and broken tools were stacked. "This is your first task," he said. "Help me organize these parts and figure out how we can make something useful. There's more value here than most people realize, but only if you know how to see it." Alara's eyes lit up. She loved tinkering, creating, and finding possibilities in what others considered useless. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work, sorting pieces by size, type, and function. She began assembling small devices, combining parts to make simple tools that could help the settlers with water distribution and repair work. Jace watched her, occasionally offering advice. "You see a problem and you solve it," he said approvingly. "That's what humans do best: adapt, improve, survive." Hours passed, and Mara returned to check on their progress. She looked over the assembled tools and devices, her eyes widening in surprise. "This is impressive," she said. "I didn't expect so much from you two. You've improved our efficiency by almost half already." Alara felt a warmth in her chest. Praise again, and this time it wasn't about surviving or hiding. It was about creating, helping, and making a difference. She smiled shyly, glancing at Jace, who gave her a small nod of approval. Just as they were about to take a short break, a sudden alarm rang out across the settlement. It wasn't loud, but the villagers recognized the signal immediately. Mara's face grew serious. "Alien scouts," she said. "They're moving closer. We need to act fast." Alara felt a rush of adrenaline. This was different from the scavengers they had faced on the plains. These aliens were part of a larger group, intelligent and organized. But instead of fear, she felt focus. She had prepared for this. She had learned to think quickly, to observe, and to find solutions under pressure. Jace motioned to her. "Stay close. We'll figure this out together." Alara watched as he assessed the situation. The aliens were approaching from a low ridge to the north. The settlement was vulnerable, but the villagers had natural defenses: rocky terrain, makeshift barricades, and clever engineering. Jace turned to her. "We need a plan that uses what we have. Think leverage, speed, surprise, not strength." Alara's mind raced. She noticed a pile of old metal panels near the eastern edge of the settlement. If they could use them to create a diversion, the aliens might be misled. She pointed them out to Jace. "Good thinking," he said. "That's exactly the kind of solution we need. Let's do it." Together, they moved quickly, organizing the villagers to carry panels, set simple pulley systems, and prepare harmless but startling traps. They didn't intend to harm the aliens, just confuse and redirect them, giving the settlement time to secure themselves. As the aliens approached, panels shifted, noise devices clattered, and unexpected motions startled them. The scouts slowed, unsure of the source, giving the humans the advantage. Alara felt a surge of pride. Her ideas were working. They were turning the tide without fighting, relying on ingenuity and strategy. When the scouts eventually retreated, the settlement erupted in quiet cheers. The villagers clapped and congratulated one another, but many also looked at Alara and Jace with newfound respect. The humans had faced a challenge that could have been dangerous, and they had succeeded through cleverness and courage. Mara approached Alara, her eyes warm. "You've done more than I expected," she said softly. "Most would have panicked. You stayed calm. You helped us win without hurting anyone. That takes skill." Alara blushed but felt proud. She realized something important. She didn't have to be the fastest, the strongest, or even fully accepted to make a difference. She only needed to use her mind, her courage, and her human ingenuity. That night, the villagers held a small gathering in honor of their success. Children gathered around to hear stories of clever humans and brave settlers, and Alara found herself smiling in a way she hadn't for years. She shared quiet laughs with Jace, who gave her a small, approving nod. "You did well today," he said. "Better than well. You proved what humans can do." Alara looked at him, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I think I'm starting to understand what you mean. Humans aren't weak. We're resourceful, brave, smart, and maybe unstoppable in our own way." Jace's smile widened. "Exactly, and that's why I brought you along. I see it in you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The stars glittered above, brighter than ever in the clear desert sky. Alara lay back, letting herself soak in the moment. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was part of something bigger, a community that respected her, a friend who believed in her, and a world where her ingenuity mattered. The frontier was still harsh, and challenges would come, but Alara felt ready. For the first time, she realized she could face them, not as a limping outcast, but as a clever, capable human. And with Jace by her side, there was no limit to what she could accomplish. The desert stretched on endlessly, full of mystery and opportunity. And Alara knew, deep inside, that humans had a way of turning even the harshest trials into triumphs. This was just the beginning. The morning sun stretched over the horizon, painting the settlement in soft orange and gold. Alara stood outside, stretching her arms and flexing her legs. Her limp still bothered her at times, but the constant practice of traveling with Jace had made her stronger, more balanced. Each step reminded her of how far she had come, from hiding in shadows to standing tall in front of a settlement that now recognized her worth. Jace was already outside, tending to the hoverbike. His movements were calm and precise, every action measured and efficient. Alara approached, careful not to interrupt him. "You're up early," she said, her voice still carrying a faint note of awe at his skill. "Can't waste time," Jace replied. "We have to be ready. Something tells me today will test us in ways we haven't faced yet." Alara frowned slightly. "Test us? We already handled the scouts yesterday." Jace smiled, a faint glint in his eyes. "Yesterday was small. Today, we'll see how well we really work together." Before Alara could ask more, a commotion arose at the edge of the settlement. Villagers ran toward the main plaza, pointing and whispering. Alara and Jace followed, curiosity and caution urging them forward. A tall, elegant alien had appeared at the settlement's entrance. Its skin shimmered faintly in the morning light, and its eyes glowed like liquid silver. The alien spoke in a melodic tone, unfamiliar but commanding. Mara stepped forward to meet it, bowing slightly. "They are asking to speak with your leaders," Mara explained quietly to Alara. "I don't know why they're here, but it seems important." Jace stepped beside Alara. "Let's see what this is about. Sometimes it's better to understand before reacting." The alien's translator device clicked, and the words became clear. "Humans are clever but dangerous. We wish to observe your methods, your adaptability, and your courage. One mistake could lead to catastrophe." Alara's heart skipped a beat. Observation. Danger. She glanced at Jace, whose expression was calm, unreadable. "They want to test us," he whispered. "Not with weapons, but with challenges. They want to see if humans can think, adapt, and solve problems under pressure." Alara's stomach fluttered. She had faced physical threats before, but this was different. A challenge designed to test her mind, her ingenuity, and her courage. Mara turned to them. "I think you two should represent the settlement. You've proven yourselves capable." Alara swallowed. "Me? Represent?" Jace placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You're ready. I believe in you, and besides," he gave her a small, encouraging smile, "I've seen what humans can do. I know you'll rise to the occasion." Alara felt a strange warmth in her chest. It wasn't just pride. It was trust, connection, and something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. For the first time, she realized she wasn't alone in facing challenges. The alien's challenge was set in a nearby canyon, a winding maze of cliffs, rocks, and narrow paths. The task was simple to describe but difficult to accomplish. Navigate the terrain, reach a high point, and deliver a signal that would alert the alien observers without being detected by certain hidden obstacles along the way. Jace turned to Alara. "We'll need to plan carefully. Watch the terrain, notice the patterns, think ahead. Humans aren't the fastest or strongest, but we're clever, and cleverness wins." Alara nodded, excitement mingling with nerves. Together they studied the canyon, noting shadows, wind patterns, and areas where the terrain could hide them from observation. The challenge began. They moved cautiously, communicating with small gestures and whispers. Jace took the lead initially, but Alara noticed something the others did not: a narrow ledge above the main path that provided a hidden route. "Over there," she whispered, pointing. Jace nodded in approval. "You're thinking ahead," he said quietly. "Exactly what we need." They shifted their route, carefully balancing along the ledge. Alara's limp slowed her slightly, but she adjusted, using handholds and careful steps. She realized that her past struggle had given her an advantage: patience, observation, and careful planning. Halfway through, they encountered a challenge that tested their teamwork: a series of movable stones that had to be shifted in a precise order to create a safe path. Jace attempted to move one stone, but it was too heavy. Alara examined the arrangement and suggested a sequence that required less force, using leverage and their combined weight. Jace followed her instructions, and together they shifted the stones into place. They exchanged a brief glance, a silent acknowledgement that they worked well together. "You're getting good at this," Jace whispered with a grin. "Better than I expected." Alara felt a blush on her cheeks. "We're a team," she replied softly. Finally, they reached the high point of the canyon. From there, they had a clear view of the alien observers' positions. Alara handed Jace the signaling device, but he shook his head. "Your turn," he said. "You lead, I'll support." Alara's heart raced. She had been the outcast, the one no one trusted or valued. But now she held the moment in her hands. She activated the device and followed the sequence she had calculated. Each step required precision, focus, and courage. The signal lit up successfully, sending the message to the alien observers. They watched silently, recording, evaluating, but offering no interference. Jace grinned. "You did it." Alara felt a surge of pride and relief. "We did it," she corrected, looking at him. The alien's translator clicked again. Observation complete. Humans are remarkable, adaptable, intelligent, cooperative, worthy of respect. Alara felt a thrill. For the first time, an outsider, an alien, acknowledged her abilities, not her limp, not her small frame, not her youth, but her cleverness and courage. As they returned to the settlement, Jace placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see, I told you humans were special. And you proved it today." Alara looked at him, her heart warm. She had spent so long hiding, doubting herself, believing she was unworthy. But here, with Jace, she felt seen, valued, and capable. That night, the settlement held a small celebration. Mara raised a toast to Alara and Jace, praising their courage, cleverness, and teamwork. Villagers gathered around, clapping and cheering. Children looked at Alara with admiration, asking questions about her adventure. Alara smiled, answering patiently. She realized that courage wasn't just about facing danger. It was about showing others what humans could do, inspiring confidence and hope. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Jace and Alara walked to the edge of the settlement, overlooking the canyon where they had completed the challenge. The stars began to twinkle, reflecting in their eyes. "You did amazing today," Jace said softly, looking at her. "More than amazing. You proved something important." Alara shook her head. "We did it together. I couldn't have done it without you." Jace stepped closer, his hand brushing hers gently. "Maybe, but I've been watching you, Alara. You don't just survive, you shine. You're clever, brave, and remarkable, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice it." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not as an equal, not as someone worth admiration. She met his gaze, feeling the truth in his words. I don't know what to say," she admitted softly. "Then don't say anything," Jace replied, smiling. "Just walk with me, step by step, right into this moment, and maybe into my heart too." Alara felt a thrill, a mixture of joy and fear, but she didn't hesitate. She reached for his hand, letting him help steady her as they walked along the cliff's edge. Step by step, she felt her confidence grow. The world was wide and full of possibilities, and for the first time she wasn't alone in facing it. The night grew quiet, filled with the gentle sounds of the desert and distant stars shining down. Alara realized something profound. Courage, ingenuity, and human spirit could overcome even the toughest challenges. And sometimes, having someone who truly believed in you made all the difference. The frontier was harsh, unpredictable, and full of challenges, but Alara no longer feared them. She had Jace, she had herself, and she had the knowledge that humans, even the smallest and seemingly weakest, could rise to greatness. As they watched the stars together, Alara whispered quietly, more to herself than to anyone else, "I'm ready." Jace squeezed her hand gently. "I know you are, and I'm glad you're here by my side." The desert stretched endlessly before them, full of mysteries, adventures, and challenges yet to come. Alara knew that whatever the future held, she would face it not as a limping outcast, but as a clever, brave, and unstoppable human. And for the first time, she understood what it truly meant to walk right into someone's heart, and to walk boldly into her own future. The frontier stretched endlessly beneath the early morning sun, its jagged rocks and red plains gleaming with possibilities. Alara stood beside Jace at the edge of the settlement, looking out across the canyon where they had faced their first challenge together. Her heart felt steady, confident. She had grown so much, from a limping, hidden girl into someone who could face the unknown and solve problems alongside the cleverest human she knew. "Ready for today?" Jace asked, his voice calm but charged with anticipation. Alara nodded, "As ready as I'll ever be." They had received word that a nearby settlement was struggling. Water distribution systems were failing, crops were wilting, and the villagers were struggling to adapt to the harsh frontier conditions. The situation wasn't dangerous in the usual sense. No one's life was at immediate risk, but it required quick thinking, clever solutions, and human ingenuity. The call for help had been sent out, and Jace had promised Alara they would assist. The ride to the settlement was long but uneventful, giving them time to prepare. Ilara studied the terrain from the hoverbike, noting potential challenges: uneven ground, rocky ridges, and small gullies where water might collect unexpectedly. She felt confident in her ability to navigate these obstacles and help the settlement. When they arrived, the villagers were gathered in the plaza, looking anxious. Mara, who had accompanied them, introduced Ilara and Jace to the settlement leaders. "These two will help us," Mara explained. "They've handled similar situations before and have proven their skill and cleverness." The leader of the settlement, a woman named Tira, looked skeptical at first. But she quickly noticed how calm and prepared Ilara appeared, how her eyes constantly scanned for solutions, and how she moved with quiet purpose despite her limp. "Show us what you can do," Tira said. Ilara and Jace walked through the settlement, inspecting the water systems, the crop fields, and the storage areas. They noticed small issues immediately: pipes blocked with debris, water channels slightly misaligned, and areas where soil had dried too quickly. "This is fixable," Ilara said quietly. "We just need to reroute some channels and adjust the flow. Then we can improve irrigation and storage." Jace nodded. "And we'll need to make some tools to help redirect water without damaging anything. I think our scavenged parts from yesterday can help." Ilara's hands moved quickly, sorting the materials and assembling small mechanisms. She and Jace worked side by side, instructing villagers to help where needed. Step by step, they created solutions that were simple, effective, and clever. Hours passed. The sun climbed high and the villagers began to notice improvements. Water flowed steadily into fields that had been dry, soil was properly aerated, and small devices helped distribute the water more evenly. Children watched with fascination as Ilara demonstrated the mechanisms, and adults whispered among themselves, impressed with her skill and ingenuity. By late afternoon, the settlement was thriving again. Tira approached Ilara, her eyes wide with admiration. "I've never seen anything like this. You didn't just fix things, you improved our entire system. We'll have water for weeks now, and the crops will survive the next heat wave." "How did you know what to do?" Ilara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I just observed, thought carefully, and worked with what I had. That's what humans do, we adapt and solve problems. And I had help," she added, glancing at Jace. Jace grinned. "She's being modest. Ilara led the effort today. Her ideas made this possible." The villagers began to applaud, and Ilara felt a strange new sensation: pride. Not just personal pride, but a deep, communal pride in what humans could achieve. She realized that even the smallest or seemingly weakest humans could make a huge difference through creativity, intelligence, and courage. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Jace and Ilara walked to the edge of the settlement, overlooking the fields they had helped save. "You did it," Jace said softly. "You proved it. Humans are special, and you are remarkable." Ilara felt her chest tighten. For so long she had thought she was weak, useless, and unworthy. But now, after facing challenges, helping others, and using her mind to overcome obstacles, she understood something profound. She had value, she had courage, and she could make a real difference in the world. I didn't know I could do all this," she admitted. "I used to think my limp meant I couldn't be useful, that I was invisible." Jace shook his head gently. "No, your limp doesn't define you. You've always had the strength, just not in the way people expected. Humans aren't just strong in body. We're strong in mind, in heart, and in spirit, and today you proved it." Ilara looked at him, a small smile forming. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You didn't need me," Jace replied. "I just helped you see what you already had inside." That's what humans do. We lift each other, and together we're unstoppable. The night settled around them, stars twinkling like diamonds over the desert. The wind whispered softly through the canyon, carrying the scent of the earth and the promise of new adventures. Ilara felt a deep sense of peace. She had survived hardships, proven herself, and found someone who believed in her. She wasn't an outcast anymore. She was a hero in her own right, clever, brave, and valued. As they prepared to leave the settlement, Tira approached them once more. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "You've not only saved our water and crops but also shown us what humans are capable of. We'll tell every settlement nearby about your ingenuity. You've made humans worthy of respect in ways words cannot express." Alara felt a glow in her heart. It wasn't just the praise, it was the acknowledgement that humans, even those considered weak or fragile, could achieve greatness through intelligence, courage, and cooperation. Jace looked at her with a soft smile. "Ready to head home?" Alara nodded. "Yes, but I think I want to keep helping people. There's so much more to do." Jace laughed softly. "I thought you'd say that. Humans never stop, that's why we're special. And I'm glad you're on this journey with me." They climbed onto the hoverbike and Alara steadied herself, feeling stronger and more capable than ever. The desert stretched before them, wide and open, full of possibilities. She looked at Jace, feeling a deep connection. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing in me." He tipped his hat, his eyes warm. "No thanks needed, you earned it. Step by step, choice by choice, you proved yourself. And well," he paused, a small smile playing on his lips, "I think you've walked right into my heart, too." Alara felt her cheeks warm. She reached for his hand, letting him guide her as the hoverbike lifted off the ground. Together, they soared across the desert, side by side, leaving the settlement behind but carrying with them the knowledge that humans could rise above any challenge. The frontier was vast, filled with unknown challenges, strange creatures, and mysterious places. But Alara no longer feared it. She had courage, cleverness, and a companion who believed in her. Humans might be small and underestimated, but they were unstoppable when they worked together, used their minds, and stayed true to their hearts. As they disappeared into the horizon, the desert wind carried a quiet message to the world. Humans are remarkable, resilient, and special. And Alara, the limping girl once feared and ignored, had become a symbol of that truth. The stars shone above, witnesses to a new era of human ingenuity, courage, and heart. And as the hoverbike glided over the red plains, Alara felt free, capable, and ready for any adventure the universe could throw at her. The journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, but humans had a way of turning even the harshest trials into triumphs. Alara smiled, leaning slightly toward Jace, and whispered, "Let's see what comes next." Jace squeezed her hand gently, their hearts beating in sync. "Together," he said. And together they soared into the frontier, proving that humans, clever, courageous, and unstoppable, could face anything and shine.